Hi, Kassane. Thank you for your time today. We are doing a short interview between the differences of the working life in New Zealand and the UK. Without further ado, let's jump into a couple of questions. Tell us a brief introduction about yourself, who you are, and what do you do?
Great, thank you. So my name's Kassane Khan. I work as the building consultancy lead for CBRE in New Zealand. I am also a qualified neighbours assessor and chartered building surveyor.
What type of work are you involved in?
So at CBRE, we really concentrate on the commercial surveying element of the surveying world, I guess. A lot of it being transactional due diligence. We look after large commercial technical due diligence on acquisition and vendor disposal. In addition to that, we do a lot of capital expenditure planning, dilapidations advice, schedule of conditioning, and increasingly a lot of financial monitoring and development monitoring on large scale commercial projects again.
What motivated you to move from the UK to New Zealand?
It's a really good question. It was an interesting one from my part. I was probably a couple of years away from becoming a partner of my firm in the UK. I knew someone who had recently emigrated to New Zealand and was working for a company who had effectively offered me a position to come over to New Zealand and look after one of their regional offices, which was actually based in Wellington at the time, which I did, and that was around 6 years ago now. So I've been here for a while, I think.
What would you say are the most prominent differences between the UK and New Zealand?
Yeah, there most definitely are some. I think New Zealand, you have a much smaller market. So I think generally speaking, consultancy work is a lot more competitive when it comes to price. The flip to that, of course, is going to be the work-life balance. You know, I was in a very repetitive fashion in the UK of kind of leaving for work at 6:30 in the morning, not getting back in till about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. There were very, very long days, and it just felt like family life always came second. Whereas New Zealand is in complete opposition to that. We tend to prioritise family life a lot more. And look, I say this with a pinch of salt because it really does depend on the employer that you're working with, the industry that you're in, and more importantly, your manager that you're reporting into. That really defines that work culture. But, you know, being here a few years now, I'm quite confident in saying they do prioritise the individual and family life a little bit more than what they do work.
What are some of the most notable projects you've delivered in the last year or two?
Wow, there's been quite a few, as I'm sure you can appreciate. A lot of what we do is confidential, simply because it is relating to large-scale acquisitions. I think some of the most notable ones I did over the past couple of years, two spring to mind. One being a large retail portfolio, which when transacted was the largest retail transaction in New Zealand, and that effectively required us to deliver technical due diligence vendor services across 5 large shopping malls, and that covered the whole span of New Zealand across both islands. That was a tricky one because there was a lot of compliance due diligence that was involved in that because they are retail centres. In addition to that, there was an element of environmental due diligence as well. So it was effectively a full suite of services that we delivered across 5 main centres. I think the entire period for delivery was around 3 to 4 weeks, which is quite full on if you imagine the geographical restraints of the centres, in addition to the servicing that we had to offer on those, the reporting timelines and delivery. And I think the second one I'd like to think of was a large hospitality portfolio that was a couple of years ago, and that effectively involved acquisition side technical due diligence across 15 hotels. That was challenging simply because one of the purchasers was internationally based, so we were trying to fight around 3 or 4 different time zones in order to carry out team meetings and general project updates on that. And again, the remote locations of those hotels was a considering factor. Some of them were at the foothills of glaciers and in forests and very, very remote locations. So that was quite interesting from a geographical point of view and from a general time delivery point of view as well.
Thanks, Kassane. Just one final question. What advice would you give to someone looking to emigrate? What are the pros and the cons?
Oh wow, I think New Zealand's an interesting market. From my experience, you only very recently have started to get homegrown building surveyors. They actually never had a building surveying degree at the local university until about 3 years ago. So we are getting a lot of homegrown building surveyors currently, but historically that wasn't the case. So a lot of surveyors came in from the UK and Asia. That being said, I would say it's quite a mature market. A lot of the firms over here specialize in certain work delivery and types of surveying. So if you're at a more junior level of your career, it would really beg for you to consider whether you want to come over, because at times there will not be that breadth of service and experience that you require for, say, sitting your APC. When you're a little bit more mature and you're kind of like senior level and above, I think that's really when the market lends itself and is more open to you as a candidate. That being said, I have had some junior surveyors who've kind of gone up the ranks with me, and I think one last point I'd love to mention is just the isolation of it. A lot of people think New Zealand is a bit of an adventure, and most definitely it is. But if you're not set up mentally for being this far away, it gets quite challenging, because you begin to realize you're very far away from home. You don't really have a support network. You don't have that many friends. So you really need to give it that sort of longevity and thought behind whether you do want to make a move, if it's going to be a temporary move for a couple of years for experience, which a lot of people do, and that's absolutely great. But not all of those people then decide to stay out for the long term. So yeah, something definitely to consider.
Great. Thanks so much, Hussein.
Thank you.